So today we are fitting our Peco Electrofrog points and using the DCC Concepts Cobalt Digital motors. So this is Electrofrog. Now from the pack this works perfectly well, and you can just pop it into your layout and away you go. Peco do suggest that you will modify that, and the reason you do that is because it's relying on a mechanical contact to energize the frog. The frog being the little V-shaped bit at the end. So the way it works is that if you put the point to, let's say, that way to turn out, is that the blade picks up the power from the track, from that main line, and then it runs all the way down and it energizes the frog, a little V shape. And again, on the other way, it will change it because it needs different polarity for the train to run through it. If you look on a install frog like this old type of Hornby thing, there's a big black lump in the middle, which is there's no power there. So if you've got a small shunting going across, it's probably going to fail and stop going. So that's why most people choose Electrofrogs, it would seem. So as we move the blade from one side to another, so it powers the it goes through there, and that's what powers the frog. So the first thing we need to do is we need to disrupt that little join there. So we're going to pull those off in a second, and then we need to add in a connection. So we then connect that part there to the top rail. So it's got a permanent. It's permanently going to be black or positive or whatever way you want to look at it. So there's a permanent. It doesn't rely on the blade touching the side of the rail, because as you get a bit of ballast in there and it gets old and dirty, the connection will be less reliable. So this little wire here is the power in for the frog. So we'll keep that out. We'll need that in a minute. First we need to do is to take away the little join there. It's a tiny little wire. It's easiest to pull it off. It's safer just to pull it off with a pair of pliers. If you can desolder it if you choose, but if you get solder in between that joint, it's a nightmare to get out, and then you've ruined all your work. So just pull it off. It's much easier. And then we need to make a little jumper wires, and we use the part of the that old frog wire that we've cut off, and we're just going to jump between the outside rail and the tail of the guide rail, or the blade I should say. So I'm just going to sand these back a little bit with a file just to make it a little bit rougher, and then the solder will take better to that. Oops, I forgot my flux, so best to use a bit of flux in there. We just want a small amount of solder on there, not too much, just enough just to attach those small jumper wires in a minute. So basically what we're doing here is these jumper wires just make sure that the individual sides of the blades are powered correctly at all times. So they're not relying on that mechanical contact anymore. And then we just use the small jumper wires, the piece of wire from the frog that we've cut off, that little frog wire, and we're just going to connect that across. That's all we need to do. So at this point you can see now we've broken that contact, is that the frog is receiving no power, so you need to deal with that separately, and we'll do that in just a second. The good thing is the DCC Concept point motors actually will deal with that for you with just literally one wire, so we'll take advantage of that. Lots of point motors do that, but this is by far the simplest way I've ever done. So that's that bit done. So next thing we need to do is to just put in some dropper wires on these on the points. It needs on the main rails, the inner and the outside rail. I've chosen to do it here. All the webbing is pretty tough there actually. Some people use it to apply their droppers at the end, where the webbing is thinner. I can understand why that is, but here seems to be a good point to go in. So just need to cut the webbing away just to bare the bottom of the track, and we're just going to rough that back a little bit to make it easier to solder. A touch of flux just to make the solder flow more. And then again, just a small amount, just it makes it easier once we put the dropper wires up. It's easier for them to attach. So dropper wires, we just need to bare the ends. We're using the little tool there, which is a great, if you haven't got one, honestly go out and get one. It's much easier than using a pair of pliers or a blade or your teeth. Much cleaner. And we just need to tin the ends of the dropper wires, and the reason we do that, as I'm sure you know, is that first of all it makes it easier when we're going to connect it to the track because we've already got solder on it. And also the main thing for me is that it just makes it much neater because this is multi-cord, so it's got lots of strands of thin wire inside. This just solders them all in one piece, so you don't get an odd piece of wire sort of flailing around one of the strands and it will touch on the other track and you'll get a short and you don't know why. So to make it easier to fit, just going to bend it over like a little hockey stick, then offer it up and solder it in. Just make sure that obviously you get the black going towards the back. That's our sort of the way we're doing it on this layout. Once we turn the point over, the black will be in the correct position. Obviously, it's upside down at the minute, but just be mindful of that when you solder your droppers on. And then we need one for the frog as well. And we're just going to connect the green one to the frog. And that's it, ready to go. So next thing I need to do is just make a space for this point in the track. Obviously if you're laying this from fresh, you may already have a space and not need to go through this stage, but as you know, I just laid 2 lines. So I've just marked where I need to make the cut. So one of the join is on the join of the 2 pieces of flexi tracks. I only need to cut this point, and I'm just using a Dremel with a cutting disc. This is a metal cutting disc on this one. Just need to cut through those marks there. You can use there are rail cutters, like a pair of tin snips, which a lot of people choose to use. Now with Electrofrog points, if they are used in any way, you need to just insulate both ends of the points like that. If you've got 2 points that are sort of matching together, going from one to another, you may want to insulate all the lines of the join rather than just those 2, but definitely those 2 in the middle will need insulating, otherwise you'll get a short when your point is thrown. And just normal joiners on the others, normal fish plates, and we're just going to pop that into place, but we need to mark out where our dropper wires are going to go through the baseboard. So the black and the red, and then one for the green, which is just about under there somewhere. and then obviously we need a hole so we can operate the point motor, and it's going to be in there. So I'm just going to chop away a little bit of this. I'll keep this bit for later because I will need to add some of that back in, otherwise the ballast will fall through the hole when we get to ballasting it. But I'm just going to keep these few odd bits these offcuts safe. I'll use that later. The hole is probably bigger than it needs to be. I think if we look at the DCC Concepts, it suggests a 10mm bit, but I've used a 16 because that's what I had to hand. And then just a hole big enough to put the dropper wires through. That's the one for the frog. Pop the dropper wires through. And then we just connect the point in, and then we're ready for our next stage. Right, so this is the DCC Concepts Cobalt Digital motor. It comes with a few bits and pieces. We'll come to those in a second. And one of the things I really like about these is that the connections are all done by these sort of push fits here. So especially if you're underneath the baseboard, you haven't got to scrabble around with screwdrivers and molten solder, which will drop in your eye anyway. So it's just easier to use. And then on the side there's a switch which you use to set the motor. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. That's pretty much all there is to it. These are quite robust, come with a lifetime guarantee. And the people at DCC Concepts are very nice to speak to. I can vouch for that personally. So it needs a tiny bit of assembly. So we're going to put the little tension bar in there. I think it's got a tension bar. That goes through the sensor hole. There's 5 holes, but we're just going to use the middle one. Pop the bar into place, and then secure it with a screw, which comes with the kit. And then the bar will slide up and down. You can move that to adjust the amount of tension that the that rod will exert on the blades. So yeah, just sort of use that and set it up as you need. But most people generally start from the top, and that kind of works. And it also comes with a sticky pad, which makes it much easier to position, rather than I've used, you know, blue tack and tape and all sorts of things for previous points that I've used. Now before we fit this, we need to make sure the blades are centered, so that rather than being left to right, they're in the middle. Take off the sticky pad. Yeah, it's sticky, and then from underneath we need to just fit that. And I've just used the fact that I'm having the label towards me. When I look from the bottom of the baseboard, all my points run left to right anyway, rather than, it's not a loop, as you know. So I'm going to pop that in there. You can just see the wire coming through, and then just push the motor with the sticky pad firmly into place. I'm going to screw that on as well later. The screws are provided. So this is the point motor we're wiring in. Don't forget the point has obviously got its own dropper wires, so they need to be connected up separately as well. So just make sure that that's done. I'm not going to show it here because they look exactly the same what we're doing. So these tabs we've used before in the previous video where we did the bus wiring and the dropper wires. I won't go through them again. But I'll leave a link at the end of the video to that particular video if you want to watch that again, or if you missed it. And so they need to go into place on those tabs, and then we'll hook through the wires, and these are the wires that are going to go to the point motor down below. and then we just solder them into place. So I'm not going to show you soldering because you've seen me do lots of that and I'm not very good. So then that's the frog wire, and that comes straight from the point, and these are the wires that are going to go to the that I've just connected to the bus wire up above, as you saw. And that's all wired up now, ready to go. So on the Hornby Select, this is set a little bit differently to other accessories that you'd normally set. So the first thing we need to do is to move the switch into that forward position where it says set. And basically what's going to happen is that the point will learn what we're going to do next. So we're just going to set the address. We're using number 61. Click the left, click the right, or you can do it right and left, as long as you're doing both. Turn the switch back then to run, and then you will see the point will actually start to move. So rather than telling it where the address is, we just let it learn and it picks up the address that we're using, and that's it. And that's all done.